Shalom friends, today we are going to share with you the Parashat Leja, and Leja means go by yourself. And this is the Torah portion and it's in the book of Bereshit or Genesis, chapter 12, verse 1 to Genesis chapter 17 to verse 27. In the Parashat is about Abraham, and I'm gonna make a question to my kids and they are going to answer. What did Yahweh tell Abraham to leave his country and his family and go to the land of Israel, known as Canaan in ancient times?
Because the country where Abraham was living was idolatry, and Yahweh wanted to make a great nation from Abraham blessing, but first he had to get out from a idolatry country to go to the promised land of Israel, called in ancient times Canaan. And Yahweh promised to make a great nation from Abraham and bless him if he obeys Yahweh to leave a pagan country.
What was the blessing that Yahweh promised to Abraham if he obeyed to leave his country and his family?
The blessing is this: I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. Bereshit, Genesis 12:30.
Did Abraham obey?
Yes, he went out of his country straight to the promised land, Israel. What is the
calling today for the Christians who believe in Yeshua?
That they may return to obey the Torah, for the word Torah means instructions of Yahweh, and the Torah are the commandments of Yahweh and the feasts that all the believers in Yeshua have to celebrate, written in Leviticus 23, because the Christian church celebrates feasts that are not in the Torah. For example, they worship on Sunday, but Sunday was ordered by Constantine, Catholic emperor.
Okay. The true day of worship ordered by Yahweh since the creation of the world is Shabbat. Genesis 2:3, Exodus 28, Exodus 20, verse 8. And Shabbat starts Friday night to Saturday night. The Christian church says that they obey the Ten Commandments, but they skip and disobey the fourth commandment, and they change it to Sunday, the day celebrated to Tammuz in Babylon, and later adopted by the Catholic Church as Sunday. Tammuz is the same sun god. Other feasts that the Christian church celebrates is Halloween, but Halloween is a devil feast. Also, the Christian church celebrates St. Valentine, St. Patrick, Spirit Day, Christmas, but these feasts are not in the Torah. And if you really want to be blessed, you have to make a decision of obeying Yahweh as Abraham did. And Yahweh will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Why does Yahweh want to teach us?
Yahweh wants to teach us that we need to return to His Torah completely, because there are people that wrongly worship on Shabbat, but they go to the church on Sunday. But Yahweh wants us to obey completely and leave the pagan day and come to worship Him on Shabbat. Other wrongly thinks that they can be in a church and celebrate Yahweh's feast. That is not true, because we need to go to get out completely. other things that because they worship other church, they're in Hebrew, that is not true. Other returns to the Torah, but they can still call themselves Gentile church or spiritual Israel. But Yahweh has no covenant with a Gentile church or spiritual Israel. The only chosen people of Yahweh is Israel. So once you return to the Torah and obey the commandments, you are Israel.
Amen. The Torah teaches us not to sin, adultery, not to idolatry, not to do idolatry. The Torah teaches us not to eat unclean animals such as pork, but to eat clean animals such as the cow, fish with fins and scales, and avoid shrimp and lobster. The Torah is the 5 books of Moses, commonly known as the Old Testament or the Law. In the Torah are the commandments of Yahweh and the feasts that all the written in Leviticus 23. Because the Christian church has a mixture of celebrations. They celebrate feasts that are not in the Torah. For example, they worship on Sunday, but Sunday was ordered by Constantine, a Catholic emperor. The Torah is the most precious book that the Father Yahweh gave us. If we obey the Torah, we will live. But the Christian church wrongly says that the Old Testament is abolished. How can a book that teaches us not to commit sin can be abolished? That is not true. The Torah is our constitution as people of Israel. What was the first place that Abraham arrived inside the Israel land?
Abraham arrived to the great tree of Moreh at Shechem.
What does it mean that Abraham arrived to the tree of Moreh in Shechem?
The great tree is the Torah, and Moreh in Hebrew means teacher. The Torah is a tree of life and our teacher that teaches us what is good and what is bad. Proverbs 3:18, Romans 3:20. This means that when Abraham got into the land of Israel, he first came to the Torah and the commandments of Yahweh, as we are doing today, returning to the Torah and the commandments, the true day of rest, and Yahweh's feasts. And we invite you today to return to the Torah. Yahweh is calling you to return to the Torah. Beth Kadosh, that is the name of our ministry, because Beth Kadosh means holy house. Yahweh wants to make a Kadosh house because you and me are the house of Yahweh, and as Yahweh lives in us, we need to be Kadosh. And to be Kadosh, you need to be doing that. You need to be doing education and cleaning your life of all the Levitical tradition, but you need to believe in Yahweh. You never fear what the members of the church are going to think or what your family is going to think. Abraham obeyed Yahweh and came out from an idolatrous land, and Yahweh blessed him. And Yahweh called Abraham my friend. That means that if we don't obey the Torah, we are not Yahweh's friend. But if we obey the Torah, we are Yahweh's friend.
Abraham obeyed the Torah. That is why he arrived first to the great tree of Moreh. You need to come to the great tree of Moreh, which is the Torah. Many Christians says, we are Abraham descendants, but they do not want to obey the Torah, or they obey a few commandments, but they identify themselves as Gentiles, when our true identity in Yeshua is Israelite, descendants from Abraham. In this In this place, the great tree of Moreh, Yahweh appears to Abraham, confirming that he will give the land to Abraham's descendants, and Abraham built an altar to Yahweh. Where did Abraham pitch his tent?
In Bethel, and Bethel means house of Yahweh.
What does to pitch a tent in the house of Yahweh means?
It means to be under the protection of Yahweh, but we only can achieve that protection only when we obey Yahweh's Torah, when we rest in Shabbat, when we celebrate Yahweh's feast, and obey all the commandments.
Remember, Romans 2:13 says, because are not the hearers of the Torah who are justified in Yahweh's eyes, but those who do the Torah will be justified in Yahweh's eyes. Remember, the Torah never was abolished, as the Christian church says. Yeshua says in the book of Matthew 5:16, I did not come to abolish the Torah, I came to fulfill it. One of the biggest lies that the Christian church says is that the Torah is just for the Jewish people. But the Torah is for the believers in Yeshua from Genesis to Revelation. Other lie is that Yeshua nailed the Torah on the cross. That is another big lie, because what Yeshua nailed on the cross was our debt, the punishment that we deserve for being in sin, for being sinners. That was the punishment that Yeshua nailed on the cross. Today, if we want to be under Yahweh's protection, we need to obey as Abraham did. Other lie invented in the Judaism is that the Gentiles only need to obey the Noahide laws or Noah's laws. These Noah's laws are not in the Torah. Yahweh never commanded us to keep the Noah's laws, but Yahweh says in his Torah that the same Torah will have the natural born in home and the foreigner. Leviticus 24:22. Number 15:29. Yahweh commanded. Why did Abraham went to Mizraim?
Because there was a hunger in the land of Israel, and it was a prophecy that the 12 tribes of Israel's slaves in Mizraim took Sarah to be Pharaoh's wife. Sarah represents Israel that later would be a slave in Mizraim as Yahweh prophesied.
Genesis 15:13. Then the Lord said to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own kind, and they will be enslaved and mistreated there.
Now let's go to Parashat 13. Lot and Abraham separate from each other. Did Lot wait in Yahweh to choose a land for him?
No, Lot chose on by himself because he saw that the land of Sodom and Gomorrah was a beauty land. But he never realized bad people were living in the land of Sodom and Gomorrah.
What we need to do to make a good decision in life?
We need to ask Yah to make decisions for us, because not everything that looks beautiful comes from Yahweh. The Torah says that the devil dresses an angel of light to deceive people. For example, If you have heard the voice of Yah inside your heart, telling you that the right day are worshiping and rest is Shabbat, not Sunday, but you still go to the church on Sunday because you have many friends in a church, or you have a push-in at church and you're afraid of leaving the church, then you are not letting Yahweh, then you are not obeying Yahweh.
If you are on a church that worship Yahweh on Sunday, and because they are worshiping Yahweh or believing Yahweh, it doesn't mean that they are obeying Yahweh. You have to check first if they are obeying all the commandments of Yahweh, or if you congregate in a church that rests on the seventh day. It doesn't mean that because they meet on the seventh day, they are obeying Yahweh's commandments. For example, the Adventist church, they keep the seventh day and they do not eat pork, but they still do not accomplish the Torah. And you can say, but nobody can accomplish the Torah. That is a big lie, because the Deuteronomy 30, chapter 30, verse 11 says, "For these commandments that I command you today is not too hard for you, neither it is far off. It is not in heaven that you should say, who will ascend to heaven for us and bring it to us, that we may hear it and do it. Neither is beyond the sea that you should say, who will go over the sea for us and bring it to us, that we may hear it and do it. But the word is very near you, says Yahweh. It is in your mouth and in your heart, so that you can do it." Matthew 5, chapter 5, verse 19 says, "So anyone who breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do so will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever obeys them and teach others to do so will be called great in the kingdom of heaven." Did Abraham let Yahweh to choose for him?
Yes, Abraham let Yahweh to choose for him, and Yahweh blessed him and gave him the promised land, the land of Israel.
What was the first bad thing that happened to Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah?
The neighboring kings of Sodom and Gomorrah made war against the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah and took captive Lot and his people. But Abraham helped Lot, and Yahweh helped Abraham and delivered his enemies into their hands.
In Parashat 16, what happened after Abraham returned from the defeat of the enemies?
Melchizedek, king of Salem, met Abraham and gave him wine and bread.
Who was Melchizedek, king of Salem?
To know who was the king Melchizedek, we need to know the meaning of the word Salem. And Salem is a Hebrew word derived from the word Shalom. And Shalom means peace. Salem was the old name of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a Canaanite. Jeru is a Canaanite name for city, for the city, and Salem means peace. Putting together, Jeru and Salem means the city of peace. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, is Yeshua.
Melchizedek, king of Salem is Yeshua. The book of Hebrew, chapter 7 says, confirm it. It says, "For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, met Abraham, returning from the slaughter of the kings, and blessed him. And to him Abraham apportioned a tenth part of everything. He is first, by translation of his name, King of Righteousness, and then he is also King of Salem, that is, King of Peace. He is without father or mother or genealogy. having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but resembling the Son of God, he continues a priest forever. Who is the word of Yahweh? Yeshua.
The word of Yahweh came to Abraham in a vision and promises to Abraham a son, and asked Abraham to go outside and look at the stars. And Yahweh asked Abraham to count the stars of heaven. And Yahweh says, your descendants will be as the stars of heaven that cannot be counted.
And the big question is, did Abraham keep the commandments?
Yes, he did. In Genesis 26:5, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws.
Abraham believed in Yeshua, the word of Yahweh. Yahweh makes his promise again to Abraham. What is the promise?
To give Abraham the land of Israel, but this time Abraham has to ask Yahweh.
Abraham asked Yahweh, how will I know that I will inherit the land? Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham. We're going to see how he made the covenant.
Yahweh told Abraham to bring a 3-year-old heifer and a 3-year-old lamb, a 3-year-old bull, a dove, and a pigeon. And Abraham cut the animals into pieces, and Yahweh made Abraham fall into deep sleep and showed him a boiling pan and a torch.
Who was that torch?
Yeshua. That day Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham, telling, I will give the land of Israel to your descendants.
What do we need to do to get the Israel land?
Come in evidence to Yahweh's commandments. You probably know Yeshua, but there's one more thing that you need to obey. Yahweh's commandments believe that the Torah is for you and leave the commandments on men, because the Shabbat was changed to Sunday by a man named Consonant. The feasts of Yahweh were replaced by other feasts that are not in the Torah by the same man Consonant. It's time for you to decide who are you going to serve. But my house will serve Yahweh.
Yahweh. Here is another covenant that Yahweh made. Yahweh changed Abraham's name. Yahweh says, your name will not be Abraham. Your name will not be Abraham, which means exalted father, but your name will be Abraham. That means father of many, because Yahweh made the father of many nations. Yahweh made Abraham the father of many nations. There is a lie that Abraham's descendants are only the Jewish people, but that is not true, because the Jews are counted, and there are 15 million Jews around the world. And Yahweh says that the descendants of Abraham are countless, as the stars and the dust of the earth. So this means that the descendants of Abraham cannot be counted. But there are about 15 million Jews in the world. So the descendants of Abraham are the Jews and the believers in Yeshua. Everyone that come to obey the Torah and recognize themselves as Israel, not a Gentile church. How we say angel in Hebrew?
Malach.
And who did appear to Hagar when she ran away from Sarah?
Yeshua la melech Yahweh.
Amen. In Bereshit chapter 17, Yahweh asked Abraham to walk before Yahweh. And what does walk before Yahweh mean? What does walk before Yahweh mean?
He asked Abraham. It means obey the Torah, and the big question is,
Did Abraham keep the commandments?
yes, he did.
Okay. Another commandment that Yahweh make is okay. The other commandment that Yahweh made with Abraham is the commandments of the circumcision. In Hebrew is Brit Milah. One of the lies that the Christian church says is that the circumcision is just for Jews, that the believers in Yeshua do not need to be circumcised, but that is not true. The circumcision is a covenant between Yahweh and Abraham's descendants. Every male have to keep the circumcision as a covenant. Remember, no one can avoid Yahweh's covenant. Other lie about the circumcision is that Paul says that the circumcision is not necessary. But when Paul says to the Galatians, if you circumcise, Yeshua is of no use to you, what did Paul meant? He meant that if the Galatians converted to Judaism, Yeshua will not be of use to them, because in Paul's times, the nickname for the Jewish people were circumcised, and the nickname for the Gentiles was uncircumcised. In Galatians, the people from Galatians were from the lost tribe of the house of Israel, and the Galatians were mixed among the Gentiles. But when Paul preached to them, they came back to belong to Israel through Yeshua. And there was some Jews that wanted to convert them to Judaism. But Paul says, if you circumcise or convert to Judaism, which I want you to hear the difference. In Paul's times, the nickname for the Jewish were circumcised, and for the Gentiles, uncircumcised. That's what Paul says. If you convert to Judaism, or if you circumcise, Yeshua is not of use to you. What Paul meant is that if they circumcised or they converted to Judaism, in other words, Paul was saying, if you convert to Judaism, then you don't want Yeshua, because they were returning to Yeshua, to be people of Israel through Yeshua. And there was other Jews that they wanted to convert them to Judaism. That's why Paul says, if you convert to Judaism, then Yeshua is not of use. You don't need Yeshua. That's what it means. But Paul never says that the circumcision is no longer for the male believers in Yeshua, because the circumcision is a covenant that cannot be avoided. And Paul was grown in the Torah. Yeshua was circumcised, and Paul was also circumcised because he was from the tribe. He was from the tribe of Ephraim, of Benjamin.
Cut that part.
And Paul was grown in the Torah. Paul never says that the circumcision is not necessary for the believers in Yeshua. He was telling the believers in Yeshua that they did not need to convert to Judaism. As a conclusion, the Torah says, instruct your children in the Torah, and when they are old, they will not depart from the Torah. Remember, even if you love your kids, but you do not teach them Yahweh's commandments, it's like you do not love them. But when you teach your kids to obey Yahweh's commandments, you love them. Love your children does not mean to buy them everything they want. Love your children means teach them Yahweh's commandments. Do not teach your children Halloween or Easter or St. Valentine or Christmas, because these feasts bring curses, and these feasts seem funny. They look funny and an entertainment to the life of those who practice. But if you really love your kids, teach them Yahweh's feast, because Yahweh's feast bring blessings to our life. Spend time with your kids reading the Torah, learning Yahweh's commandments. In the book Deuteronomy 6, chapter 6, verse 7 to 8 says, these words I am commanding you today must be kept in mind, and you must teach them to your children, and speak of them as you sit in your house, as you walk the road, as you lie down, and as you get up. It is your responsibility as a parent to teach your kids the right way. And please do not put the trust in a teacher of the Dominical school, because you don't know if they are teaching your kids Yahweh's commandments. Some parents say, I take my kids every Sunday to church, and that is not enough, because when they get home, the parents spend more time watching TV than reading the Torah to their kids. Take your kids to church on Sunday, and leaving your responsibility as a parent in the hands of others teacher is not enough, because you don't know if they are learning from the Torah. And that is exactly what happened to us in the Christian church. We went to the church every Sunday with the Bible under our arms, but we never read the Torah, and we believed everything that the person that was in front of us was saying or was preaching, and we thought that that was the truth. But we realized later that there was a mixture of truth and lies. But who got us to depend on a pastor or a person in front of us? The Catholic Church. You probably have heard the big lie that if anyone read the Torah is going to get crazy. That is a lie. Nobody get crazy to know the truth. The Torah says that you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. In John 8:32. Remember, Yeshua says he only came for the lost tribes of the house of Israel, not for a Gentile church. Everyone who wants to be Israel has to receive Yeshua and obey the commandments of Yahweh. The people of Yahweh is Israel, a people who obey the commandments, and a people of Israel that does not eat pork. If we say that our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit of the Ruach HaKodesh, we need to obey Yahweh's commandments and do not eat pork. Yahweh wants a clean bride, not a Gentile church that worship on Sunday or eat pork. This is the Parashat Leja. Thank you for watching, and decide who do you want to serve. Do you want to serve Yahweh, or who do you want to serve? But me and my house, we will serve Yahweh. And this is the question for you. Decide who do you want to serve. Thank you for watching our videos. Shalom.